Ever wonder what really stops the government from just searching your home, your car, or even your phone whenever they feel like it? Well, the answer is a big deal, and it's called the Fourth Amendment. It's one of the most fundamental rights you have.
Seriously, just take a moment and think about it. Your home, your car, the phone that's probably in your pocket right now. Who actually has the right to search through all that? And when can they do it? The answer is way more complex than you might think, and it's all rooted deep inside the U.S. Constitution.
Okay, so to really get this, we've got to start at the beginning, with the core principle. What is this right to privacy we hear so much about when we talk about the Fourth Amendment?
So, at its absolute core, the Fourth Amendment is all about protecting you from unreasonable searches and seizures. Now, you got to remember where this came from. The founders were dealing with British soldiers who could basically just barge into anyone's home whenever they wanted. They were like, nope, not going to happen here. They wanted to draw a really, really clear line in the sand.
Yeah, let's just cut through all the legal speak for a second. The idea itself is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. It means the government can't just go on some random fishing expedition through your life. Before they can even think about invading your privacy, they need a solid, specific, legally backed reason. So, what does all this actually mean for you? Well, think of it this way. Your default setting is private. The government can't just search your stuff without a really good reason. And this protection, it's huge. It covers you, your house, your papers, your belongings, the whole shebang. The burden of proof is always on them to show they have a right to look.
Okay, so if the government needs a good reason, how do they prove it? Like, who do they have to convince? Well, that brings us to a really critical piece of the puzzle, the warrant.
You can literally think of a warrant as a permission slip, but it's one you get from a judge. It's the main thing that makes sure searches are done by the book, not just because someone had a hunch. And trust me, getting one is a whole process. It's not as simple as just filling out a form.
And to get that permission slip, police have to meet a super important legal standard called probable cause. This is the key ingredient, right? It means they have to show real, actual facts, not just a gut feeling or a hunch that would make any reasonable person believe a crime has happened.
And look at this path. It just shows how deliberate this whole thing is. They've got to show that probable cause, swear to it under oath, and this part is absolutely critical. They have to be super specific about exactly where they're going to search and what they're looking for. It's only after all that's done that a judge will even look at it and decide whether to sign off.
I mean, this point is so important we have to say it again. The Fourth Amendment absolutely forbids those general, let's just see what we find kind of warrants. An officer can't just get a warrant to, search John's house for evidence. No way. It has to be specific, like we're searching the garage for a stolen car, or the home office for these specific fraudulent documents.
But, like with almost everything in the law, it's not always quite that simple. The warrant is definitely the gold standard, but there are some very specific, well-defined exceptions to the rule.
So that leads to the big question, right? Are there times when a warrant isn't needed? When can law enforcement legally search without getting that permission slip from a judge? Well, yes. The courts have carved out a few situations where acting immediately is just more important than getting a warrant first.
So when can they skip the warrant? Well, first off, if you give them permission, that's called consent. Or if evidence of a crime is just sitting out in plain view. Also, when they're making a lawful arrest, they can search the person for safety reasons. Then there are emergencies, what they call exigent circumstances. Think chasing a suspect or evidence being destroyed. And finally, vehicles. They have their own special set of rules, mainly because, they can be driven away.
Okay, here's a perfect way to see how this works, especially with that plain view exception. Let's say you're pulled over in a routine traffic stop. The officer can't just decide, hey, I'm going to search your locked trunk now. They'd need a warrant for that. But if, during that same stop, they look over and see something clearly illegal just sitting on the passenger seat, that changes the whole game. They don't need a warrant to seize evidence that's right there in the open. All right, so we've got the rule, we've got the exceptions, but why does this amendment, which is over 200 years old, still matter so much today? Let's talk about why it's so crucial, especially now. I mean, this is where the rubber really meets the road. A right is only as strong as the penalty for breaking it, right? So what happens if law enforcement breaks the rules? What if they conduct a search illegally, without a warrant and without a real exception?
The answer is a huge deal. It's called the exclusionary rule, and this is what gives the Fourth Amendment its teeth. Basically, it means that if the police get evidence by breaking the rules and doing an illegal search, that evidence gets thrown out. It gets excluded. It can't be used against you in court.
And this rule is all about creating a balance, you know? It's there to discourage the police from breaking the law because, well, what's the point if the evidence you find just gets tossed out? It forces the system to play by its own rules, making sure that our right to privacy isn't just ignored in the process.
And you have to see, the Fourth Amendment has never been some dusty old document. It's always evolving. It started back in 1791 because of colonial-era problems. Then, in the 20th century, it got real enforcement power with the exclusionary rule. And today? Wow. Today, it is right at the center of our biggest debates about technology. We're talking about your email, your phone's location data, facial recognition. These are the massive questions the courts are trying to figure out right now.
So all of this leaves us with a really critical question for our digital age. In a world where we're always connected, always leaving digital footprints, where do we draw the line? The line between our privacy and our security. The principles of the Fourth Amendment are clear, but figuring out how they apply today is a huge challenge. And honestly, how we answer that question is going to define what freedom looks like for a long, long time.